worst case scenario, this is a JLab headset review. And the beginning of a long chain of tutorials meant to help you learn how to plan and make your own worship curriculum should you want to go the route of professional worship leader at a church. We'll start with something simple. We'll do Vineyard or Hosanna songs that I consider to be at least edifying for yourself and the body, even if they are light on theology. Unlike most hymns, they do still, in fact, glorify God and attempt to enjoy Him with the fellowship. So that would be stuff like All in All, Here I Am to Worship, and even some of the Hillsong United stuff at a time was very much on glorifying God rather than introducing strange, romantic language. It goes a little bit beyond the scope of God's holiness and our duty to glorify Him as if we understand that there is a difference between romantic love and an eternal romance. That squirrel's been through some stuff. What the heck? Early on, if I'm teaching you guitar, I'm going to leave you in the key of G, and that's usually the most likely place because, well, the answer is usually, well, everything's already in the key of G, and usually that's going to be for the simple fact that it's easy enough to play in, and a lot of people have a vocal range that sits pretty nicely in the key of G, and it doesn't deviate very much. But the simple reason I would have you playing in the key of G is you can use, I think they're called add 9 chords. And sometimes they're called 2 chords, like as in like the first alternative position for the chord on the guitar. Almost everything in guitar, as far as language is concerned, is like, it's a peasant's instrument, taught by peasants to more peasants. And so the lack of uniformity in the way that chord names are communicated has more to do with the ease at which we try to learn and teach, and less to do with music theory. So I don't know what they're really called. I think they're add 9 chords, or they add the 9th to them. But the 9th would only be one of the chords, because the other one, it would be a different whatever. That's not that important. In most cases, it'll be called G2 and C2, and that's just alternate names for this specific note is held down in both instances, and they're practically identical to each other. So in the case of the reason I would have you do the key of G is your ring finger is the anchor point. And with ring finger as your anchor point, it doesn't move from G, D, or C. It's always there. And if you do learn to play E minor 7th, you never move that ring finger. That ring finger is locked in place. And then all you have to do is a non-natural E minor with your index and your middle finger, and keep that ring finger exactly where you had it for G, exactly where you had it for C, and exactly where it would be for D. So take a D chord, learn the proper way to hold a D chord, and now you have where your ring finger will be for every single chord for this particular exercise. When you're learning guitar, there are a few things you have to be worrying about. The memorization of where you place your fingers, that's one. What you're doing with your rhythm hand in association with your chord hand, because you can selectively mute with both hands, and they both have varying degrees of success and sound. If you're muting with your palm on your right hand, it has a very specific sound, and if you're transitioning and or muting selectively with your left hand, it has a different sound as well, giving you a bit of a percussive direction that you can guide the rest of the band and the congregation with. So you've got the memorization of the chords, and then you have the rhythm. The rhythm is going to be your right hand and anything you're doing with your left hand to emphasize or de-emphasize the chords, because in many cases, one thing I'll tell you going forward with rhythm is the most important thing is that you're always in rhythm, and if you miss the chord change or you play the wrong note, you as an acoustic guitar player have the ability to stop the transmission of sound momentarily while you get your fingers going, while you just make sure that you're at least keeping the rhythm going. So your number one function when you're playing isn't the correct placement of the notes, that's secondary. Your primary thing is, like, if you've started on the right foot, you keep the right hand going, and then you catch up with the left should you miss something. Because you can always just take these fingers and mute the strings and then catch back up at the next chord change. And it will sometimes sound very artistic, even if it is, in the moment, a mistake. So number one would be rhythm, as far as priority, because the third part is going to be you singing, in most cases. Now, you might not be a singer, so you might not have to worry about that, but you do need to be able to enunciate in somewhat rhythm, regardless of your quality of vocals. You need to be able to sing and direct what you're doing with the rest of what you're doing here. So that would be the third part. The first part would be rhythm. Second part would be what you've mastered as far as memorizing the chords. And the third part would be the very thing that's helping you stay in line, the mapping of the words and the syllables over the piece. This is one peasant to another peasant trying to teach you, like, this thing, you have an acoustic guitar, then you have every portion of what you need to do what you think you need to do or want to do in the future. And if I'm teaching you, I'm putting you in the key of G, regardless of your vocal range, simply for the learning and building of confidence on the fretboard. Once you get comfortable in the key of G, you're going to want to figure out, is this the key for me to be singing in? In a lot of cases, especially if you're in more of a baritone range or something like me, you're going to find that you might actually have to play some of those annoying keys like F sharp major and B major and stuff like that, which requires, like, strong hands, which that's more hours spent on the instrument than actually in the theory portion of the game. So, in the key of G, your ring finger belongs in the vicinity of where you would play the D chord always. So on the first string, you're going to have your middle finger on the second fret. On the second string, you're going to have the ring finger on the third fret. And on the third string, you're going to be on the second fret with your index finger. That's going to be the key, the chord D. This is your anchor point. If you ever forget where you're going to need to be, you always just need to be able to play a D. You have to be able to, like, this is the one where it's like, ugh, it feels like, ugh, I'm doing this weird claw motion. But this is your, I forgot how to get to all the other chords. But this is the hardest chord of the four that you're going to play in this key regularly. So your goal is always to be like, all right, without thinking, without flinching, how can I get to D, right? Yeah, the holy grail of curvy rodents. You're going to be going after the key of D, or the chord D. This is the one you memorize the most, because if you get to this one, all the other notes in this particular key, which is G, are going to be much easier. So now you've got your ring finger at the anchor point. The anchor point for this purpose is, one, you're building your calluses. Your calluses will go through many transformations over the course of your time. But like Justin Bieber taught me, like, your fingerprints come back after going through the pain. So once again, first string, second fret, middle finger, second string, third fret, ring finger, third string, second fret, index finger. That's a D. And this is going to be your anchor point for the entire key of G. Then when you play C and G, they're going to be very close and mirrored to each other. Your index and your middle finger are going to come forward to the for the chord D, or for the chord G. You're going to be middle finger, third fret, sixth string, index, fifth string, second fret. And then right next to the anchor point from the D, you're going to leave that ring finger there, and you're just going to put your pinky down on the third fret on the first string. So you're going to have two strings immediately at the very bottom, right next to each other on the third fret. In most cases, this is more or less how I would teach somebody to teach guitar, and it's just a matter of, within a reasonable amount of time, this specific key, you can learn quite a number of songs, whether transposed from another key or whatever, without having to learn too many things. You need to have confidence long before you need proficiency. Because if you don't build enough confidence early on, this is my reasoning, you won't learn the other part, the rhythm. You won't have any reason to learn the rhythm if this part's too hard. If this part's too complicated, this part, you'll never figure out. This is the complicated part. This part's easy. Like, eventually, like, the only thing I have trouble with my weird duck hands is some of the more specialized, like, blues and funk chords where like, my fingers are short enough that it's hard to put them in tinier places. Whereas somebody with spider fingers, they're much more capable. Like, if you're like built like Taylor Swift, you can probably play way more chords than I can easily. So the reason I teach you anchoring that ring finger right there on that third fret, second string all the time is, one, let's remind ourselves, the key of the chord D. You want to be able to pop over to that easily. By making yourself never move this ring finger and keeping it there for as long as humanly possible, because when you do pick up the guitar for the first time, it does not feel good. It feels awful and it sucks, and there's no reason anyone would go through pain just to be able to play. But now we're learning G and C. So G and C, you're keeping that ring finger right there. Right next to it, though, in harmony, your pinky on the third fret, boom, 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 and now G and C are nearly the same exact chord, just one string apart. So now you've got sixth string, third fret, middle, fifth string, second fret, index, and then it becomes fifth string, third fret, middle, fourth string, second fret, index. And you can go back and forth between those two. And then when these anchor chords start to hurt, when these anchor notes start to hurt, you don't even have to really press them. You can practice just going from G and C with these two fingers because one, they're less painful because they're thicker, but it'll also get you to a point where like going between the 1 and the 4 regularly is where you can build a lot of songs without going anywhere really. You're going to find the simplicity in a lot of the music you listen to is really a vamp between two chords almost indefinitely, especially if you're listening to rap music and stuff like that. In a lot of cases, rap music is going from a 1 chord, vamping either a 1 chord or either a 1 chord or a 4 chord, or 1 note or a 4 note going down to either the 7th or down to the 3rd, just vamping back and forth. Now, in a lot of there's theory and all that stuff down the road for that, but in most cases, like somebody just could be like, what would it be like? It's like a walk down. Like it's an implied walk down if you're going from the 1 to the 7, and if you're going from the 4 to the 3, it's an implied walk down, and then you immediately bring it back up because you want a bit of an ebb and flow between the two things. But for now, you're creating that same walk down effect by going between the two things because you're playing you're emphasizing the 3rd in both cases of the G and the C. So emphasizing that 3rd note is going to be creating the effect of the walk down without doing the actual walk down. So like your melodic choices are going to be anchored to a vamp in both cases. And you could actually start on C and go to G and get a different effect than if you start on the G and go to the C. But the effect is still the same. There's just a swaying back and forth between the two chords, between the two notes. So when your ring finger and your index finger get tired, and they will get tired so quickly that you will want to quit guitar within 20 minutes of first picking it up. It is not enjoyable, and within 20 minutes is an exaggeration. Within 5 to 6 minutes, you're going to want to take your ring finger and chop it off, because this sucks. I don't like playing guitar. This is not fun, Uncle Josh. Yeah, but one day you might be a female billionaire who just learned to go through the pain of her ring finger. The irony of her not having anything on her ring finger after going through all that work is quite astounding, Travis, wouldn't you say? What are you doing about that? I'm going to put this on the internet. So you've got your D, your anchor note is that ring finger in D, and you're going to leave it in place to go to the G and the C and drop down that pinky for that nice little bright, like little happy. So when you're playing the G and the C, they're traditionally called G2 and C2, or G add 9, C add 9, which I don't think G add 9 and C add 9 are 100% correct, but one of them is adding a ninth, I think. I don't know, one day I'll go to school like I've wanted to, but haven't been allowed to for quite some time. And then you're going to throw E minor into the mix. So in most cases, a chorus going in a specific direction for most of Western music is going to be G, D, E minor, C. You're going to leave that ring finger in place for all of it because that ring finger right there sounds okay for every single chord. And then that way you don't forget where you're going. Playing and learning this key in this way, in my opinion, is the easiest way to get to a position where you are learning rhythm at the rate that you would rather learn rhythm, because rhythm is going to be taking you further than memorizing the chords. Once you've memorized the chords and you've gotten confident changing chords at the correct time on the beat, the hardest part now is like, well, if you also desire to sing while you're playing, which is half the reason you're picking up an acoustic guitar anyway, is if you have to do it, you will be your own band. So if you're doing, like, if we're using, I'm trying to think. 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 probably G, D, E minor, C, right? All in all. So it'd be like G, you are my strength when D, I am weak. You are the E minor that I see. You are that my C in D. Let's see. Wait, no, because it'd be. I'll figure out the chords for this as I do the official video. Because you're going to want to start immediately when you do get a sense for rhythm with one or two songs that are correct. Like my first song was Brian Dorickson's, well, I shouldn't say that. The very first song was Smells Like Teen Spirit at John Zager's house, where he's like, here, try this. And I was like, all right. So like that's F sharp, but it's power chords. So it's or F or 5 chords. So 3-string power chords are 5 chords because it's the first, the fifth, and the octave. But my very first song was like, and that's when I realized I should probably get a guitar because I learned very quickly. And they were like, holy crap, like, this is your first time playing guitar? I was like, yeah. Like, what? I was like, was that good? Like, yeah. Like, you've never, I was like, I mean, I played guitar at Bud and Catherine's when I was a kid, but I only learned like the notes, like, my country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty of thee I sing. But I learned that first on the piano at the same house over on Knox Court. Anyway, so in the case of, what was it, Psalm 121, so it'd be C, I lift my eyes until I lift my F up, C to the F chord, C to the G. Wait, what was it? C to the I don't even remember is there even a minor chord in that? G, N. I don't even remember the chords. I'd have to hold it. I'll make sure I've looked up some tabs before I do the real video. This is really for me, like, I'm an auditory learner and I'm not sure where I would start, but I would start in the key of G. Anybody that I'm teaching, it would be D, or the anchor point would be the D chord. The D chord is the most complex of the chords that you're going to be playing, and then the other two are the exact same chord basically. And then if you play the E minor chord in this fashion, you're playing an E minor 7th by leaving that anchor note down with your ring finger. I would probably do about 15 minutes here and there several times throughout the day. If you have the day off, or if you got a lot of time, just anytime you pick it up, you would just be practicing going from any of those chords with a simple metronome or a beat, which almost anyone can get a metronome on their phone. And it's just like you put it at like 60 beats per minute or 90 beats per minute, and you just try to be right on you practice going on the 1, the 2, 3, you want to get to the point where you could, if you want, go from G on the 1, D to the 2, C to the 3. But to do that, you'll have to slow it way down. So what you really want to do is like 1, 2, 3, 4, D, 2, 3, 4, E minor, 2, 3, 4, C, 2, 3, 4, and maybe you want to sing it like in key or whatever, but there's a million ways you can go about doing it. But for now, you're wanting the simplicity of, you're practicing these notes, or these chords specifically, and you're anchoring this one note, which would be, it's the D on the B string with your ring finger, right? Yeah. You're working with this simplicity on every song that you can gather a tablature in the key of D. Now, many people they're like, oh, you're doing easy C and easy G. Or if you're ever playing in the key of C, easy F is without the bar, and it's just the two notes on your index finger up top. But the goal is using the key of G to be in a position where you are easily transitioning from the chords, and you're arriving at the same speed, a level of mastery of memorizing chord changes and rhythm with your right hand, because you want to build confidence before you worry about the rest of the possibilities of the rest of the fretboard. I think it would be G, you are my D, and E, do 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 do. Back to G, you are in D to C, D. So it'd be G, D, E minor, C, G, D, C, D, I think. When I fall down, you pick me up. When I am dry, you fill my cup. You are my G, D, C, D. Jesus, all in all. All right, right. Worthy is your name, Jesus. You. Is that how it goes? Worthy is Jesus, Lamb of God. Worthy is your name, Jesus, Lamb of God. You are my all. Worthy. Yeah, so you are my all in all is verses. Worthy is your name is choruses. Okay. Sorry, it's been a minute. Let's see. Any other things at this point on this particular lesson that I would teach? I would teach transcribing, specifically the lead notes or the lead sheet. So the chord changes, if you're making lead sheets, and you do want to be making your own lead sheets, and you do want to have access to your own printer, even if you're going to the library to make your masters and then going to the church and having them make copies for you. You want to be in a position where you're positioning the chord changes on the actual syllable that they happen. So you go online a lot of times, and a lot of people mean well when they're at ultimateguitar.com and whatever, and you've got your tablature and you've got your chord sheets and stuff like that. But something gets lost in the formatting at times, because if you are submitting your own tablature and lead sheets to these tab sites online, you're going to want to use like something like Notepad instead of either Notepad, or you're going to want to use the editor itself in the website to make the lead sheets. You could do that, and then you could build a profile on Ultimate Guitar yourself, which I might actually think about doing that myself. At the start of your journey, if that's what you want to do, is you want to lead worship, there's a specific way I would go about it, and a specific way that I felt that I grew faster. And I grew faster just by building confidence with the little bit I understood. And once you build confidence, you get to the point where all of it is like, just like I've worked a lot of jobs. If you work a lot of jobs, eventually they start to bleed together on how you as a worker would take initiative. You find different pockets of like, oh, in this job I would take initiative by doing this, or I do this. But eventually, like, everything is like a muscle memory act of like, I'm coming together with a team to accomplish something, and this is how I would support the team. And so anything that you're doing on the fretboard is now you're like, all of these little things I'm telling you to do, if you do these things and you do get past the days where it's like 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 15 minutes there, it's all going to be dependent on your pain tolerance. Your ring finger and your pinky finger will be the most beat up fingers, because they're on a skinnier, more abrasive string more often for some of these chords. that they're going to be in a position where the calluses are going to be really rough. They're going to be violent. There's going to be days where your callus is going to look like a taco, just ready to serve up a microscopic amount of beans on it, right? And you're just going to be looking at this like this grotesque, like you're like this is like self-flagellation learning guitar. It's like, what am I doing here? Like, ugh. And then you're going to be like, people who used to bite their nails are now going to be sitting there biting their calluses when they're nervous. And you're going to be tempted to rip them and pull them apart. And you don't want to really do that too much. You want to get an emery board and just shape them slowly but surely back to the shape of a finger, because your fingers are going to be deformed for a bit, especially when like people who haven't really used their pinky for like leads and stuff. Once you start using your pinky more, you're going to realize like, okay, I gotta get the shape back, because the shape of your calluses and getting them to a rounded fingertip again is going to be what in most cases is going to be success. The other thing I'm going to tell you, girls, unless you're Dolly Parton, you're not yet, you're going to want to cut your fingernails until you get a perfect understanding of where your fingertips need to be to push down on the fret to get the perfect sound ringing out from the guitar. Because you're going to want precision. You're going to want to be, sometimes at the very beginning, you're going to want to be as close to the middle of the fret as possible, in between two frets, I should say, so that with the least amount of pressure and effort, you can push down the note. You're also going to want to play with 11s or 10s, which is when somebody talks about string size, in most cases they're talking about the smallest string in the pack. You're going to be looking for 11s and 10s, but you might, as you get stronger, want to graduate up to 13s, just for the sake of volume. 13s are louder, 13s are brighter, 13s are perceived to be more musical because they can compete with a piano, like in the case of bluegrass music. And I learned that the hard way, because my favorite guitar ever, gifted to me by my friend Alan, fell face forward with some 13s on it, and the tension of, the thicker the strings, the more tension, up to 30 more pounds of pressure, but if it falls on its face, you could break your guitar. So another reason why you might want to go with lighter strings is you're a klutz and you don't want to break your really expensive investment. That would be a footnote somewhere if I were writing this down on a page. Let's see, what else would we talk about? But lead sheets, the way lead sheets, the way a good lead sheet would be is you want that note, that chord change, you want the downbeat on that chord change to happen right on the syllable, if at all possible, if applicable. So like if I'm singing all in all and I'm getting back to the verse, I'm like, Jesus. It's a very easy cheater right there, because the chord is G, and the pronunciation of Jesus at the beginning, that's the downbeat. So G, like right, the G would be typed right over the first syllable of Jesus. Jesus. Lamb would be D, I think. Lamb. So right when you say lamb would be the D typed over the lamb. D of, let's see, Jesus, Lamb of God. E minor, worthy, so worthy, like first syllable of worthy would be E minor. Worthy is your name, C for name, so you do phonetics, so G for D, or G for God, G for Jesus, G for dirt, C for Christ. Worthy is your, C is Christ's name, So that would be how you would do lead sheets. You would be specifically on the syllable that chord change happens, to give your band the best chance for success, and to give you a good chance for success is figure out where that chord change happens in the vocabulary that you are attempting to sing over the chords. Worthy, so then the second word, worthy, G, it, worthy, yeah, let's say, Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Worthy probably worthy is. So Jesus, Lamb of God. So God be like on the sea. And then G for worthy is D on is. Your, would it go back to D? Name. So name. So then you would break down a one syllable word is sung as if it's two syllables. Name. 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 So on the inflection on the second half of name would be the next chord, and then back to D, G, Jesus, something like that. So I've got to explain that, show that on the blah blah blah. What else? I'm trying to I wanted to build a worship curriculum back at the last place I tried to get a job, but they wanted an interactive resume online. And this is before everyone was taking online super seriously, but they were a young couple running the church at the time, so their desire for that type of resume was an admirable, but even for someone like me, I was like, what do you like for that specific type of resume, they would also want video of me leading worship at some point. It's like, well, I'm retired. There isn't footage of that I can easily get, even though I asked around, because there was video of it. A lot of people don't have that video like digitized and put on the computer to share easily. So it's just one of those things where it's like I was just a little bit ahead of the internet game, but way behind by the time I had tried to get a job doing the very same thing. So I just threw a couple songs on SoundCloud with the little bit of equipment I had, and then they were more offended that I was on SoundCloud. And I was like, SoundCloud allows interaction and communication between artists and the audience. So technically, even now on this day of our Lord, was it the 29th of June, 2025, it's still one of the only social media networks for music that allows the very thing that I care about. And I've tried to use other networks that have come along, like BandLab, and you get a copy strike for trying to collaborate certain things that may already have copyright to them because of the nature of their program. It's focused more on original creations and not true collaboration, and so that's going to be its downfall if it does not find a way to market reimaginings and collaborations or whatnot. So there's my feedback on BandLab. You guys technically just suck. Well, whatever. So there's that. What else? You're going to want clean lead sheets. You're going to want to print outs. You're going to want to go through the time and effort to make something in Microsoft Word, or go to LibreOffice, download LibreOffice if you can't afford or don't want to give any more money to Microsoft. And then go through and meticulously make these, like if you're doing 3 songs coming up, it's very common to be like, well, I got a binder of these things and this and that, and then you're sitting there, if you're trying to figure out a key that's better for yourself, you got all these things written in, and it turns into hieroglyphics for your band. And it's like, well, then they're like, well, I play it in this key with this worship leader, and then I have to play this key with this worship leader, and then you want me to do it in a third key. So that's fine if you're like, if you have professionals like I had, they were fine with it. But you want a clean, fresh, like you want, this is what I play it in, these are the notes, this is good for my vocal range. I have gone through the effort of making it as tidy as possible on the syllables as the chord changes happen, so that everybody who is playing can follow, because a lot of people who are still playing in church are very classically trained, and so they need it, at the very least, they need the best presentation you can give them, and that means you've gone through the effort of making this song about your vocal range and getting rid of as many distractions. You don't want to show up with a binder with a bunch of notes and a bunch of this, and we're playing it in this key, and you don't want to be rekeying it while you're at, if you do rekey it at practice, the next time they see you, you want to show your team that you also went to the office, typed it up fresh, and put those notes where they belong, and there's just those notes that you're working with. That would be the most constant, like, annoyance, where it's like, I don't even know what key I'd sing it in. Like, in most cases, when you're starting out, you might not even, like, have a mentor vocally. And so even just the option of singing harmony is, like, alien to you because you just barely got the confidence to stand on stage with the melody. So you want to make sure that when you're in charge of the melody, it is 100% catered to your vocal range and your presentation. One thing you're always going to want to be mindful of, though, is if you can go lower, understand that the most people in the congregation, I would say this is a tutorial for people who want to lead worship. Just because you can sing it in a certain key as high as possible doesn't mean that everyone else can sing even the lower parts without, like, fumbling around for a few weeks with that particular song, because most of them are also not singing that song in that key in their spare time for any reason. They might be singing it in whatever key they hear it on the radio with this artist, and that artist might sing it higher than the person at church. So you want to make sure that musical intuition for anybody that's heard the song a million times can sing along with you, but if they are not given the opportunity to at least, if you're a professional singer, there's a good chance that you sing much higher than the average person is comfortable singing. And so if it sounds like people aren't joining in with you, it's because the song is too high and confusing for them. I'm trying to think other tidbits, because, like, if you're watching what this tutorial turns into, you're going to be watching me try to stamp out every possible hurdle that you might face, because leading worship is actually very easy. It's a lot like, it's like, a lot of people look down on country music. It's just a simple instrument and a simple presentation of lyrics and theology played a very simple way that you can pull a guitar out and you can lead anywhere in any corner of the world if you master some of the more intricate, like the mindfulness of the people that you'll be working with. But a lot of people, when they go to church, they go, it'd be kind of neat to pick up an instrument, but I'm afraid of all of the things that might be involved in the instrument. And there are quite a few things. Like I said, you've got to memorize chord patterns. Memorizing chord patterns isn't nearly as hard as enduring the chord patterns and practicing them enough to give your rhythm hand a fighting chance to make it sound like you've put it together and you're starting to have a grasp on what this thing is. There's a lot of people who are, like, very, very naturally gifted and they pick it up. And I still remember the day I figured out how to play just about any rhythm. And I was so worried that I was at Josh Shanice's house. I had the day off from my internship. And I was just sitting there going, like, the thing I'm missing, the thing that's keeping me from being on stage regularly is what to do with this hand, what to make this hand sound like no matter what is going on. Because, like, when you're playing acoustic guitar, it's all rhythm. You've got an entire drum set on the right hand. You've got palm muting. You've got intricate. You've got different ways you can hit the strings while you're playing certain chords to create certain sounds that have varying degrees of percussiveness and varying degrees of, like, intimate, like, low key, like, ambient feel. That this thing becomes like, this is like the most important thing. Like, if I were like, well, how do you get better at the rhythm hand? I'd be like, find a thrift store, buy a nice pair of corduroys for like $20 or less, and keep a guitar pick on you while you're driving. And then just practice doing rhythm on your corduroys. Or your jeans. Denim will do in most cases. Like, a lot of denim has a very like zipper feel to it. And you're going to be starting with downstrokes, like 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 e and a 2 e and a 3 e and a 4 e and a 1 e and a 2 e and a 3 e 4 e. And now you've learned to multiply 4 by 4, and you have all the possible options of creating unique sounds by lifting up your hand and throwing your palm down and aggressively interacting with the strings from multiple different movements with your hand. I'm not going to be too organized with the way I do this, but I am going to be very, very purposeful in how I teach it, because you've got chord shapes to memorize, but then you have to memorize. You're going to be in pain for a bit. Things are not going to feel good. Your fingers are going to scream the first 3 or 4 times you're hanging out with your guitar. You might make it 10 minutes. You might make it 15 minutes. By the end of a week, if you just play this in the key of G, if you're just playing in the key of G for like a week, in 1 month, if you keep at it, you should be able to play just about any song on the radio, should you be able to find the key for it. We can work on, I'll probably work on transposition, the circle of fifths, and being able to quickly identify, well, this would become this chord, and this would become this chord, and this would become this chord, and there are apps to do that with, so I might be looking at guitar apps that show you like this is this and this and this and this, and I might make a diagram that I can easily show you and whatnot. I think I can do this all on the internet without having my own computer, so I'll figure it out. But for now, this is a basic outline that I will follow to write a more organized and visual-based outline, so it doesn't sound like I'm just sitting in a park randomly thinking out loud into my phone. Is that the start of it? That's probably the start of it. Could have did this a long time ago, but ultimately, I had, at one point, I had a file on my computer with all of the songs that I had purposely put in the key that I plan on singing them in and leading them in and having my band play along with me in. That I started with a binder, and I started with a bunch of files, and I took them and I copy-pasted plain text and re-edited them so that they were now mine, and they were for my team, and they were for my congregation, and they were in my key. The reason why you also want to search for your preferred key, where you're not too high and you're not too low, unless you want to do Johnny Cash bluegrass style, is you're trying to make sure that, one, you're not wearing out your voice when you're practicing. Constantly screaming and reaching for a key that you don't belong in is going to have you worn out. So then when you do actually get to the day that you're singing, you're going to have a worn out voice. You're going to want to be thinking about cutting back on caffeine and nicotine and various inhalants so that you have the best foot forward with your vocal cords. Beer and wine and whiskey are going to be sometimes foods, because those things actually dehydrate your vocal cords in conjunction with nicotine much faster than you would realize. And you're going to find often, if you like Copenhagen too much, you're going to have such dehydrated vocal cords that it's just not even a chance in heck that you're going to be able to do what you used to do, because you're swallowing 4 cans of Copenhagen a day. Well, no wonder you sound like that. But everyone else is like, wow, he really let himself go, and you're on SoundCloud. I was like, this is not the moral of the story. I didn't get the job at this particular church years ago, probably because of my down there. So let's see if we can start out on the right foot this time without a roof over our heads.